My name is Herman Schwank, and we're out in a canola field. Mostly coal is what was used for heating, and propane was starting to come in. It wasn't there real early, but propane got fairly popular beginning about 1960.
When I was a little kid, we burnt wood and coal. I lived just half a mile north here. We didn't have power or gas here. It was all nature. When we first come here, we had diesel fuel. And I remember that gelling when I was 45 below at 4 o'clock in the morning. And get up and get that running, and then the power went off for about 8 hours, and things were not good.
Having the natural gas, it was just a complete new era. The 36-inch pipeline went right through our yard, going to California. If they were going to benefit by it, why shouldn't we? Our engineer, Jack Fierce, said there's no reason that we shouldn't have this gas. So we went to Valley Gas, Canadian Western. They just laughed at us and said, there's no way you people can get it or even look after it.
Well, like any other farmer, I was using quite a bit of fuel, and I tried to convince the utility companies that maybe they ought to look at us, and we tried and tried and tried, and no, we're not feasible. I said, it's costing me $9 a day for propane, because I was using quite a bit. I said, it cost my brother $7 a month in Edmonton.
The fellow from the Conservation Board in Edmonton said, Tom, if you will look after it for 5 years, we will give you a license to operate. And that's how it all began.
Before the gas came in, there was very few farmers had all their farm buildings heated. And when the gas came in, most of the farmers put in a yard system that extended to virtually all the buildings in their yard. And when you have a shop that's fully heated in the wintertime, for example, some of the farmers were able to establish a small business, because they had the kind of facilities and the atmosphere that they could work in the wintertime.
We've made it so that it was much more economical for perhaps greenhouses, intensive livestock industry. We were just going out of the era of coal furnaces and that type of thing, and it brought rural people up to the same type of utility that the cities had enjoyed for years.
In 1962, they, after a community meeting, created Mayota Gas as a cooperative and said, we will work together to do whatever's necessary to create the first lines to serve the first customers and invite other members to come in, and we'll start to continue to build out the system. And once Mayota got into operation, got its first gas lines in the ground, its first customers being served, then word got out and the movement started to spread across the province. Why can't we, if we're over in Bassano or some other place in the province, have the same opportunity to access gas? Because these big pipelines are now crisscrossing the province. They weren't 10 years earlier, but they are now. So why can't we get the gas as well? It became obvious that it was very important for these co-ops to have a representative body that could deal with government and deal with regulators on a concerted basis. And it would be much more effective to have a central organization in order to represent the views and the interests and the concerns of the rural co-ops, as opposed to the one-off type of scenario that Mayota had faced in the beginning. The end result of that was a movement largely driven by Mayota to create the federation.
The original gas co-ops that were formed had formed a federation before the rest of us actually, existed. And they had found the necessity to have someone that spoke as a single voice. And it's been that way ever since we really got established. Every co-op practically in the province has always been a member of the Federation.
The Federation was important because we were able to provide a common voice.
Mistakes that what we had made by being a confederation, we shared all our problems and everybody benefited by them.
We spoke as a group, and we spoke for the whole group. And one of the first questions that the MLAs would ask when we came in to see them is, how many members do you have? Well, that was an easy answer because at that time, by the time we were coming in to see them, we had 100%. And there's not many groups can say they got 100% of anything.
So one of the primary roles with the Federation when it was first created was to come up with a financing structure. And one of the obvious opportunities was to have that discussion with the government in terms of how you enhance the life in rural Alberta through the availability of natural gas, which meant through the co-ops, which meant through the construction of these lines. And it's an exercise that's taken the better part of 40 to 50 years to build out.
So some 40 years ago, when the rural gas program started, the government seen an advantage for gas to be provided in rural Alberta. So they invested some dollars, the farmers invested some dollars, and created a program out there that's seen worldwide now as a model.
Actually, it was Hugh Horner, who established the program for the government. He was behind it. And his vision, I think, was that every farm in Alberta shall have natural gas if they want it.
Well, my father was a rural physician in northern Alberta and understood a lot of the trials and situations that people who lived in rural Alberta at the time in the 50s and early 60s. So when he became involved in provincial politics, one of the things that he and Peter Leahy talked about was you don't want to have everybody just living in the cities. Rural Alberta is important. It was important to them. It was important to our economy. And I think what they looked at was, well, what is it that rural Albertans didn't have that urban Albertans have? Well, we had party lines. We didn't have our own private telephone line. Roads and access to services was difficult. And we were heating our homes with propane or coal oil, or we weren't taking advantage of what was an abundant resource in Alberta, and we could. And so they saw that there was an opportunity to put that on as an election platform, as a progressive kind of platform, put it into their campaign in 71. When they won, and my father was appointed as the Deputy Premier and Minister of Agriculture, it was kind of a natural that they would look at things like, what can we do to make life in rural Alberta as attractive as possible to maintain that kind of diversity in our province. So I think it was in 73 when they decided they'd come forward with the rural gas program so that they could make it affordable to get that kind of thing. And it's been an absolute fabulous piece of work for Albertans. Natural gas is in everybody's home in Alberta. It's an abundant resource. I think you'd be very proud to see what's happened.
First anywhere in Canada that the whole rural area's got telephones. Why wouldn't it work with gas? Well, I had an answer for that. It will.
It was a good deal. It was something that would make rural Alberta come alive again.
And without that financial support, the infrastructure that we have today and the extent to which the rural co-op movement has spread across the province would be a fraction of what it is today, especially in northern Alberta where the densities are much lower.
In a town or something, a kilometer of gas line services a lot of people. But we've got areas where maybe it's 3 or 4 miles between customers.
The pioneering spirit is still here, even after 100 years of being here. We still look at, let's help our neighbors, let's get together, and if somebody won't do it, if the industry won't do it, let's get together and do it ourselves. That's what federated co-ops have done, and kudos to them.
You know, you needed massive provincial support to make that program work. I mean, the province basically told the large pipeline companies, if a gas co-op comes knocking on your door and they want access to the supply, well, you kind of have to give it to them, guys.
Everybody got gas, regardless of how close they were or how far away they were from gas, and everybody paid the same price for gas too, which was very important in that everybody was equal, and still everybody is equal, and as a gas co-op movement, we're very proud of that.
The Federation has done an incredible job in ensuring that that program not only was effective to begin with, but has been maintained and carried on for the last 40 years.
It was establishing a new precedent.
Yeah, and there was no real experience, you know, this all came at once. You know, it was something new. It's a big project, you know, when you just figure province-wide. And contractors, some of them were not that good.
The biggest challenge was that most of the farmers who were involved in the gas co-ops had never had much experience with natural gas. I think in a lot of cases we had a lot to learn, and we did. We learned as we went along, and we made mistakes, and we improved on things that were already happening, and we, I guess, got the job done.
To build a gas system, you have to cross everybody's land. And to do that, you need a right-of-way or an easement. And a lot of people that weren't interested in gas themselves, but they gave us easement anyway. And I think that speaks highly of the farmers in that part of the country, all over the province, actually.
Various directors just went around and canvassed the people. Some directors did a lot of driving. I didn't do that much, but some of them did.
Oh, we faced opposition from some people. Some people thought it was a pipe dream.
There was the odd holdout that was determined that propane, for example, was a far better deal. There was people that had spent a lot of money with coal furnaces and coal-fired systems in their yard, you know, and it took a while to persuade people.
$1,000 in those days was a lot of money. And a lot of people were, you know, skeptical, is this going to work? They were used to using coal or something like that. And so the majority did sign on to start with, but there were lots of them that didn't. And eventually, when they seen how it was working for their neighbors, they eventually got tired of hauling ashes out and shoveling coal and signed on for the gas.
We had areas where we had to go around parcels of land because the owner didn't want a pipeline of any kind on the property.
When people realized that it was for the good of the community, most of them came around, and probably 95% of the people just signed an easement without any problem.
If you looked at the early efforts back in the late 60s, early 70s versus what we now see, the role of the Federation has increased in its mandate, its scope, and its influence very substantially.
Well, the Federation has grown bigger, more staffing because of more functions that they're kind of handling on behalf of the co-ops. And of course, the whole rural gas program is changing, right? Just as our world changes. Changes in customer base and how they view the co-op in their world and what their expectations are. Changes in the actual practices and policies at provincial level. So much more emphasis on safety and documentation, and just a lot more to think about out in the field than there was 30 years ago.
As we've evolved as a structure, I think most people realized that the Federation had to evolve too, and it became a much more professional organization. It was just like the first co-ops that were formed. They were a kitchen table type of an operation, and now most of the gas co-ops are running a multi-million-dollar business, and the Federation has evolved to become the spokesman for the group.
They are still our lobby representation at the provincial government level. They have centralized services that they do for us, like the data collection and a very excellent training program they provide, as well as the insurance plan that they've negotiated on our behalf.
When the co-ops first started looking at insurance providers to provide them insurance, no one wanted to get in, no one wanted to look at co-ops. Who were they? They had no history, no record.
Right early on in 1973, we got a insurance program that we made available to every member system. Training
is another item that some of the co-ops were really reluctant to do it, but now I think everybody realizes that in today's world it's a necessity.
When I got hired, the training was not a real high priority. It was just, here's a vehicle, here's some wrenches, go to work. But not now. Now it is more focused, where everyone has to go through a training phase and a mentoring phase or apprenticeship or whatever it might be.
Safety is a key issue, and training has become a major part of what the Federation now does. And we have almost all of our employees attending Federation courses.
We offer everything from driver training to the regulation metering station training. We have a station downstairs that all the training, or a lot of the training, is held in our office for it. We offer safe workplace training. You know, it's anything that people really need.
You know, the Federation and its members are such a dynamic group of people, and by dynamic I mean it's an ever-changing environment. Every time we get together with our members, they give us new ideas, new thoughts. Did you ever think of this? What about this? Or hey, we don't have this, could we get that? The organization itself is almost self-sustaining in coming up with new innovation. And as long as society and our members in the province face that in their daily lives, it will come to the boardroom in most of the co-ops and the member owners of the Federation across the province. It's impossible to stop.
The rural community, I think, just given the challenges that we face, tend to be a little bit more innovative in the solutions.
Well, farmers have had to be pretty innovative to keep going.
Oh no, change never stops in this industry. It's always advancing. Well, prior to probably about 97 or so, Nova used to operate the stations where the gas was coming off their main line and going into the co-op's distribution systems. They decided it was not big enough for them, so they turned them over to the co-op and rural utility, or town utilities and that, to operate themselves. The benefit is now the co-ops can operate their own stations. They know what the stations do. They visit them at least once a month to make sure everything's working properly. At the same time, they put in what's called automatic meter reading at the wholesale stations.
All our wholesale data collection is done remotely through automatic meter reading equipment instead of the manual way they used to do. We're also, all the co-ops are quite involved in getting automatic meter reading units out on their customer meters.
AMR is automatic meter reading. Basically what it does, it provides us with an accurate meter reading on either an hourly basis or a daily basis. The idea behind that was to better our gas balancing within our system. It helps us in determining if we have a gas loss within the system. We can bill our customers at exactly 8 a.m. on the first day of the month, and that's when we get our wholesale reading at the same time. So it gives us an accurate gas balance.
It's all going to be read electronically, so we, instead of waiting out in deep snow to read it or forget to read it and get a surcharge,
With the AMR project, especially over the last few years, they were able to get accredited to do field installs through Measurement Canada, which was a huge plus for us. It saved us all a tremendous amount of money.
Since then, in the measurement department, we've been accredited to do field work and we're the only company in Canada that can do this.
Well, my name is Jerry Graves, and I'm the CEO of Delphicom Corporation. We provide IT services and electronic services. Meter installation in the field, we have a group that does that, and then of course our airborne data collection. All the gas co-ops were driving around the country manually reading meters. This technology eliminates that. It eliminates inaccuracies and it eliminates estimates.
The government was the original owners, you should say, of Gas Alberta, and when they privatized, that was one of the things that went. And so through a process, it went through the Federation, and then we formed a separate company called Gas Alberta Inc.
It's a corporation that buys the gas for the co-op utilities. It's also member-owned. The members own Gas Alberta, same way they own the Federation.
Well, it is very important for the simple fact that there's places in Alberta where there is no natural gas that's available at a close proximity. So, the gas that we would take off at a certain point is so small that some companies don't want to talk to you. So by using a large company such as Gas Alberta, they can negotiate a price for everyone that's fair.
Internet service has almost become as important as electricity is for power, as natural gas is for heat. Internet service is almost like an essential service right now.
And no one was coming to provide it. If you live more than 2 or 3 miles outside of town, you weren't going to get service.
It means that whether you live in a major city or whether you're in one isolated rural area, you have the same ability and to communicate with other people. And
today we have about 140 carrier grade 300-foot towers up in the province, and it was all about that same spirit that started the co-op, the identification of a need and a call to action. And we did it.
What happens is those meters send a RF signal continuously off the meter, and in that, the meter reading is in that signal. So we installed collectors on the corridor towers to collect those reads. So it's been a great thing since its inception.
GIS is a good management program for our system, so we can keep track of what we're doing, what we need to do, inventory. We utilize it for a lot of our projects. We're looking to see where, kind of the lay of the land, pipelines, where we can go, the easiest routes, landowners we can pull up and keep tracking to see where we want to go. Where our system has good supply off our pipelines, and good points to tie into.
I think at our convention every year, the relationship with the government is so clearly displayed by how many participants we get when we have our annual bear pit session. So last year we had 20 combination of ministers and MLAs come and sit at the table and take questions from the audience. If they didn't think that your voice was important, there wouldn't be 20 there.
It's always well attended, and it's well attended not just by rural members of the Legislative Assembly or rural cabinet ministers. It's attended by urban MLAs because they also understand the importance of these kinds of organizations to the fabric of Alberta.
I work for 1,200 people. There's 1,200 members in this co-op. I work for 1,200. Yes, I have a board of directors, and yes, I have a chairman I answer to, but I virtually work for 1,200 members.
Each of our customers essentially has a stake and a say in the operation of our co-op.
The cooperative model really focuses on putting people ahead of profit and a common motivation and a common goal. What made the co-op thrive in rural Alberta is that no one else would provide the service. So they developed their own.
Co-ops are finding that they have to operate as businesses. They're not kitchen table entities anymore.
When we first started, a lot of people thought that you'd go out and build a gas co-op and that would be that. But 40 years later, there's still challenges, and it's become a major business. And people still like the idea of living in the country, and I guess a lot of the people that are in the cities do have rural backgrounds, and they're proud of the fact that they do.
And we're seeing a whole bunch of changes that people are moving to the country. There's more subdivisions in the country. There's more people coming to the country for a better way of life.
I think we need to be, always continually investigating opportunities, and I think the Federation is effective in providing all the member utilities with information.
We're constantly looking at new ways to do business. We're looking at maybe there's other things to do other than natural gas. Maybe we can get into power. Maybe we can do a whole bunch of things, but we have to do the research. And you need a central organization. Everybody can't go out and do these little things.
We are still independent units. We still operate on our own, and I think at this point in time, the Federation has made some fairly significant improvements in the collaborative ventures that we need to do together to ensure that a lot of the issues that we face are not dealt with individually, that we are part of a group, and that just reinforces a cooperative spirit.
We're in there to provide a reliable, safe service and to keep the gas flowing. And sometimes when the big corporations come in, they lose that community concept. And I think that's where we're going to do all right, is the fact that we're going to be maintaining focus of our roots, which is our members. And that to me is more important.
Over the last 50 years, I guess, we've seen technology change, we've seen a regulation change, and over the last probably 10 years, it's been greater than ever. So we all, as gas co-ops, are trying to stick together in order to tackle these issues, if you want to call it that. And the Federation's been a tremendous help in guiding us through that.
The implications have been huge, and it just continues to grow.
So we have to look at how do we succeed in the next 20 years? How do we succeed in the next 50 years?
There's certainly a strong future for the gas co-ops because, again, it's a cooperative. They hit a challenge head on and they'll do it together.
I think the Federation is key in making sure this thing goes on successfully.
Yeah, this is probably where they signed the rural gas program documents, was on his desk. You think about 1905 when Alberta became a province, what was going on? People were getting together and doing things because they knew nobody else was going to do it for them. And that's the kind of attitude that I think is still prevalent. That's the attitude of the gas co-ops, that's the attitude of the REAs. That was the attitude of people at that time, and I think it's still there in large measure, but when you explain to people who have come from other jurisdictions around the world and talk about a cooperative movement that has helped rural Albertans or rural Canadians move forward with a quality of life, that's a good message.
The implication of having natural gas spread out through a distribution system in the rural areas has been almost insurmountable to measure.
It provided Mr. and Mrs. Farmer, Mrs. too, I'll tell you, with some convenience, some comfort.
It's been a huge part of rural Alberta. The Federation and its members, the Gas Co-op, have provided an essential service to rural Alberta where nobody else was about to do that.
It really helps sustain rural Alberta. It's important.
It's been a great economic driver for rural communities.
I think they've had a fabulous impact, a great impact. I mean, I can't imagine not having gas out there.
I can't even fathom what those guys in the beginning had to do.
We took it on as a challenge, and we still look at it as a challenge, but right now it's really a happy challenge. Most of us are extremely proud of what we've done. It was rewarding.